everyone, it's Christy with Cottage Grove Quilt Company. Thank you for joining us for our last segment of our quilt along. I'm a day late, but it's been a bit much. So we're at the time where we talk about borders. And someday in my future life, I'm going to be a little more organized and a little more together. But we are going to go ahead and end up our borders segment, and we're going to talk about borders. But even though you can still see, I am working on piecing my center together. So I got a little bit of homework I still need to get caught up on our quilt along. But I do want to talk to you today about borders and the importance of how you put your borders on. Now for this project we have two different colors of borders. We have a lighter color border and a darker color border. Now why do I do that? Personally for me, I like the way it frames my quilt and it gives it kind of that finished look. Now a lot of more modern quilts don't add borders, and also for this quilt right here behind me, because of the print that I used on this outer piece right here, I do have the option, if I'm happy with that, of not adding any borders at all. There is no science out there that says, yea verily from on high a quilt must have borders. Okay, there's reasons why to have borders and there's reasons not to. One reason is because the pattern said so. That's a perfectly fine reason. That's the way the designer said to do it. Another reason to have a border is how it frames your quilt, okay? When you long arm a quilt, it's a good thing to have a border on it, even if you're planning not to have any borders at all. If you just put a little mini 1-inch border around your quilt that you can trim off, it just helps with getting your quilt laid out square and laying it out straight on the long arm. It does help with that, if you're so inclined to do so. But nobody says you have to have a border. In fact, there's lots of quilts that I don't have a border on it, and it's okay. That's fine. It's not a big deal. So, you know, it just depends on what you're pleased with. But in adding a border, as what we're going to do in this project, there's a couple things we need to talk about, and that is the science behind adding a border. So when you're doing your borders, you need to measure for a specific size. What you're going to do is you're going to measure the length of your quilt on the left, on the middle, and on the right side of your quilt. You're going to measure in all three places, and you're going to write that number down, because if you're like me, from the time you take that measurement and walk away, you will have forgotten the number. So you're going to measure your left side, your middle, and your right side. You will write down all three numbers. Now, if you're a super rock star piecer, all three numbers should be the same. But if you're anything like me, they're going to be off a little bit. So then what you do is you take the average. So you add them up and divide by 3. And once you have that number, that is the length that you cut your border. Okay? It's very important to measure. And so that becomes the length measurement will be on both the left and the right sides. Now I always do my length side first. Then when we measure our other part, for the top and bottom borders, I measure from my I measure the top across horizontally, the middle horizontally, and the bottom horizontally. And when I do that, then I again add those three numbers up and divide by 3. And then I have that average. And then that's how I add the top and bottom. Now you may say, Christy, well then, why do I have to do that for every border if I'm doing a quilt that has 2 borders? The answer to that question is yes, you do need to do that for every border. Okay? So if you're doing it, if you have a quilt that you're working on and it say has 5 borders, you do that for every time you go around. Every time you go around. And even if it's a piece border, every time you go around, you have to do that measuring. If you don't, there will be fullness and you will create more problems than you want to deal with. So be sure to measure your borders this way. So again, I measure my left, middle, right, take the average, cut my length, and if I have to piece my length together, that's okay. I always do that piecing on the diagonal, and then I cut it to a precise size. So if I come out with my measurement being, say, 50 inches and 5/8, I literally cut that strip 50 inches and 5/8. And then what I will do is I pin it to I find the center, pin the center of the strip to the center of the quilt. And then I pin the upper and the lower to the upper and the lower. And then I will pin along the side, and if there's any fullness, then I can ease it in as I'm stitching. And that helps create a flatter, more square quilt. And then I repeat that same process for the top and bottom. So you're going to go and do that this time on your borders, and this is your homework. I want you to share pictures of your project now that we finished the quilt along. So what we're going to start doing is next week we're going to start doing regular Tuesday tutorials. So every Tuesday on Facebook and on YouTube you'll be having a weekly tutorial as we get prepared to launch the next quilt along, which will be sometime this summer. Alright you guys, this has been a lot of learning for me and a lot of fun. I've learned one thing. I got to get myself a little more together and not be waiting so much to the last minute, so that's my goal. And I just have loved seeing all of you guys' colors that you're picking out and the way you're doing this design. I am going to love to see the final projects. I can't wait. So please be sure to post them into our group page. All right, you all have a great day, and thank you again for joining us on this quilt along. Bye-bye.